U.S. history. Hello, 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 hello. Hope you are doing well, and hopefully you got your assignment done for yesterday. And we want to continue in this chapter. This is the last chapter of the year. So we're cruising right along, and we're going to look at page 595. And we're still talking about old Slickster, Bubba, Bill Clinton. And we are going to continue to talk about him for the next couple of days. But today we're going to talk about the comeback kid. Tomorrow we're going to talk about some of his policies. Needless to say, Bill Clinton, let me just be honest with you about Bill Clinton. Now, Hillary, different story. Hillary does not look like the kind of person I would want to just hang out with and chit-chat with. Bill Clinton, on the other hand, back when he was president, was one of those guys you were like, well, I don't like a lot of his stuff, but, I mean, he looks like a cool guy. Looks like a fun guy to just hang out with. That type of person. Seemed like a down-to-earth kind of dude. And that was Clinton's charm, so to speak. That's what he had going for him. Now, Bill Clinton had always, and he actually received this label, the comeback kid, after losing New Hampshire. And then he went on to win some more primaries in his first election and became the Democrat nominee. So that's where the name really stuck. But he had been called that before. He got defeated in 1980 for the Arkansas governor's race, and he came back to recapture it a couple of years later. He also, as I mentioned, New Hampshire, he lost that. And then here's where Bill Clinton is as far as comeback kid, as far as policies. His health care plan went up in smoke that he put Hillary in charge of. He also lost in 1994 because of the contract with America. He lost the houses of Congress. No longer are they Democrat, and he's working with easy pickings. He is having to face a battle. Now, one thing that your book talks about, Newt Gingrich, we mentioned him yesterday, Speaker of the House from Georgia. He did his job. That's one thing that you can say about that Congress. When they said, this is our contract, these are 10 things that we're going to vote on in the U.S. House of Representatives. As I told you yesterday, there were things that were going to be difficult to pass. But they voted on them. They held up their end of the bargain, which was huge because usually politicians don't do that. They voted on all 10 things. 2 of them made it through. Of those 2, only one remained. The other one was a line item veto. Now, the line item veto, let me just explain. If I get a bill, like a law, passed by Congress, the president, according to the Constitution, has the authority to either veto the entire law or pass it, sign it. The line item veto said he could look through like a budgetary type bill and say, we're not going to spend that money on that. And he could veto that one particular part. I personally like the line item veto. The United States Supreme Court, however, did not. They said it was unconstitutional because it is not set up that way in the Constitution. So they looked at it as an unconstitutional bill. And the Supreme Court, as part of our checks and balances, got rid of it. Bill Clinton, however, as I mentioned, his demeanor seemed down to earth. He was popular. He was a popular president. The public liked him. And he used that to shape people's opinion. People did not like the Republicans, and they viewed them as staunchy. They viewed them as boring. They viewed them as mean. There was a video, and I don't think we watched it in this class. We watched it in one of the classes just for fun one day, that shows later on, this is under another Speaker of the House, but it shows them pushing Granny off a cliff. And we may have watched that, and you may remember. They viewed Republicans as mean. Said they wanted to cut out school lunches. They don't want to feed kids. They hate poor people, those type of things. And they branded Republicans with this brand. Bill Clinton, on the other hand, branded himself and the Democrats as someone who really cared about the people, who loved the people. He loved the people so much. One of the things I remember about Clinton is one of the first things he did was pass a tax hike. And he made it retroactive. In other words, they passed it several months in, but he made it retroactive to Inauguration Day. So you had to pay all those back taxes. Yeah, that was Bill Clinton. But people liked him. He was a likable guy. One of the issues, and you don't hear about this much anymore, and it's sad in a way. And right now, with all of this spending that Congress is doing, all of these relief packages, trillions and trillions of dollars, our deficit as a nation has just exploded. Now, the president is looking, and no offense to anyone, but he's looking at, the fact that China didn't tell us the entire truth. As I told you, they wouldn't about the whole corona epidemic or pandemic. I'm sure the president, other countries are looking at ways to charge China. The president really ought to say, hey, we owe you all this money. Let's deduct this amount from that. This is a thought. But a deficit is where you're spending more than you're taking in. So we pass a budget, and it says we're going to spend X billions of dollars this year as a federal government, but we're only taking in like $1 billion less or $2 billion less than we're going to spend. That is deficit spending. And the Republicans were big anti-deficit spending people. And Clinton said, hey, we're not going to cut these items because it's going to hurt poor people. And that is going to hurt Republicans. They're going to use the news media. The news media was biased even then. You've got to remember, this is getting in a time where the media understands what they have. They have a monopoly. And so they took the side of the Democrats and said, well, Republicans were wanting to kill children by not feeding them. And it branded Republicans as these mean people. The Republicans would pass budgets with these cuts in them, and Bill Clinton would not sign them. He would veto them. Okay, who is not passing the bill then? Who's not signing the bill into law? The president. And the government ran out of money. Your book mentions 2 times, November of 1995 and December and January of 95/96. Because there was not a new budget, there was no stopgap measure in effect at that time like we have now, and the budget ran out of money. They had to shut down some national parks and some other things, and it was because the president wouldn't sign the budget that the Republican House had passed. Well, in essence, the president is shutting down the economy. He's shutting down the government. Now, normally people would look at that, and if Trump were to do that today, people would say, well, the president shut down the economy. But Bill Clinton was such an expert at playing the media and playing the public perception that people blame Republicans for this. They said, well, it's the Republicans' fault that the government shut down. It's the Republicans' fault that I can't go to the state or the federal park, the national park, and have a good time. I can't go to Yellowstone because of the Republicans. And they blame them and not Bill Clinton. So anyway, Bill Clinton decides, because this is such a battle, Bill Clinton realizes, hey, if I'm going to be reelected, I'm going to have to do something here. Bill Clinton was an Arkansas tax and spend liberal. He was a liberal Democrat. But he realizes he was politically savvy enough to understand, if I'm going to win re-election, I've got to do something. And that was move to the center, or become a centrist, middle-of-the-road politician. I'm going to give up some of my liberal leanings, and I'm going to pass some conservative measures. Congress ended up caving to the president, and they passed a budget that had more deficit spending. Bill Clinton moves to the middle, and now we're on page 596, if you'll look there. Bill Clinton started going against the Democrat Party to a certain extent. He said he was tough on crime. He's a new Democrat, is what he said. I'm No, look, I'm a new Democrat. Yeah, yeah. He said he supported family values, and he will do some things as a centrist that say that he was, even though in his heart I think he hated doing it. He said he was tough on crime, and he gave a lot of speeches on crime. He gave some speeches against immigration, and he said the era of big government is over. That's a Democrat speaking. The reason he was doing that, he moved to the center. One of the big things, two big things he did. One was the Defense of Marriage Act. Bill Clinton had been big on, he believed in, homosexuals had as many rights as anyone else. But he'd signed this Defense of Marriage Act, and it gave federal benefits like health insurance, things of that nature, for spouses in traditional marriages only. He left out the homosexuals out of that. It made some folks mad in the Democrat Party, but it stood for family values. Also, this was a big one. The Welfare Reform Act of 1996. It required, as your book says, welfare recipients to go back to work within 2 years and set a lifetime cap of 5 years for assistance. So in other words, you couldn't just sit at home anymore and draw a welfare check, where it had been that way for years. It had been that way since FDR, pretty much. And Lyndon Johnson was one of the big ones who increased this. Bill Clinton said you can't do that anymore. You've got to go back to work. You've got to find a job, and you get a total of 5 years of welfare for a lifetime. This was huge. Very, very huge. This made him look like he was a centrist. He was middle of the road. He's going to pick up some Republican votes as a result. The economy was doing well under Bill Clinton. The economy was going strong. We're going to talk a little bit more about this tomorrow. One thing that Bill Clinton was slipping on was terrorism. Radical Muslims decided, hey, let's bomb the World Trade Center. Now, we think about the World Trade Center bombing as September of 2001. That wasn't the first time. 1993 in February, some radical Muslims go into the World Trade Center. I believe it was a big van, but they packed it full of explosives in the basement of one of the World Trade Center towers, parked it near one of these support pylons, big support column, and they set it to blow up. They thought that it would destroy the pylon or the support, and the building would collapse. It didn't, but they tried. It killed several people, killed 6 people, injured thousands. And it was a sign that terrorism was here. And in the past, terrorism had been in other countries. Yeah, we've had ships bombed, we've had military bases attacked by terrorists, but not on our own soil. And one of the things that Bill Clinton had an opportunity to do was get Osama bin Laden. Now, you remember Osama bin Laden was one of the masterminds of 9/11. And Bill Clinton had the opportunity to literally take him out of this world, kill him. And he chose not to. And that's going to come back to bite us, so to speak. Also, there was other terrorism. And the 25th anniversary was, I believe it was Sunday, April the 19th of 1995. A guy rented a rent-a-truck, a Hertz rent-a-truck, packed it full of fertilizer and some diesel fuel, made explosives out of it, and he bombed the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. It killed 169 people, 19 of them were children. There was a daycare in this federal building for the federal employees where they could drop their kids off and go to work. And these were homegrown terrorists. It was Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols. They were anti-government. It went back to Ruby Ridge. It went back to Waco. And they did not like the government, so they were going to take matters into their own hands and needlessly killed many, many people. Timothy McVeigh ended up being executed. Terry Nichols, they had separate trials, and obviously Nichols had a better representation. And McVeigh was the main guy. He drove the truck and lit the fuse, so to speak. But McVeigh was executed. Terry Nichols serving life in prison. All right. The election of 1996 put up Bill Clinton against a guy by the name of Bob Dole. Bob Dole was a World War II hero, very good guy. His wife was Elizabeth Dole. She was very popular. He was from Kansas, and the Republicans thought it would be a good choice. But Bob Dole's nickname, and that's not in your book, became Bob Dole. Bob Dole. He was not a very exciting candidate. And bless him, he had been injured. One of his arms would not work. I mean, this was a war hero. His arm just hung limp to his side. It was pitiful. He was older. He had been in Washington for a long time. In fact, he was the Senate Majority Leader at the time. And people viewed him as a Washington insider, or as President Trump would call him, he was part of the swamp. And that hurt him in a lot of ways. Also, the other thing that hurt him, your book mentions this in one of the little side articles, he didn't address a lot of the issues that Republicans care about. Abortion. He would not address abortion. He avoided it. He avoided marriage. He avoided a lot of the social issues that Republicans care about. And as a result, Republicans were not excited about his campaign. Normally, if somebody is big time anti-abortion, as I am, and a candidate just kind of leaves it on the table and doesn't mention it, I'm not going to be a big supporter of him. I voted for Bob Dole. I will say that, but I wasn't excited about it. Kind of like voting for John McCain. I voted for him, although I wasn't excited at all about it. I liked Sarah Palin, did not like McCain, but he was better than the alternative. All right. Also, another player comes back in this election, guy by the name of H. Ross Perot. Now look, listen to what I'm telling you here. The economy, yeah. And here's how it worked out. Bill Clinton, last election he got 42%. This time he gets 49%. So that shows you how bad Bob Dole's campaign was. Bob Dole got 41%. H. Ross Perot got 8%. But in the Electoral College, it was 379 to 159. Clinton wins re-election. Now, Clinton's economy, we're going to talk about it tomorrow. It was strong. And I'll tell you some of the reasons why Clinton's economy was strong tomorrow. We'll get into that. No assignment today, but I do want you to look over those materials, if you will, and make sure you're familiar with all of these things as we finish our final chapter. And Clinton is a fascinating subject even to this day. A lot of controversy surrounds Bill Clinton, but it's interesting to talk about tomorrow. Let me see if I can. Tomorrow, we're zooming tomorrow. It's only a day away. Yeah. We're going to Zoom tomorrow as I close the piano lid. We're going to have a Zoom meeting. Now, here are your times. You ready? Write this down. And it will be in your assignment column tomorrow. 1 o'clock Eastern. If you're on the Eastern time zone, we are going to meet at 1 o'clock Eastern. If you're on the Central time zone as myself, it will be noon. Okay? 1 o'clock Eastern, noon Central. We're going to have a short Zoom meeting. It will not last very long. We're just going to catch up. Please try to be there. Please make every effort to be there tomorrow. We're going to kind of wrap some things up. We're going to talk about maybe an extra credit possibility, those types of things, and I need you there. Plus, I'd just like to see you and hear your voices. So please try to be there. 1 o'clock Eastern, noon Central for a Zoom meeting tomorrow. And then on Monday, we will resume with the chapter. We will finish it next week and have a test next week. Hang in there. We're close. Listen, love you guys. Miss you. Praying for you. Pray for me if you will. And we will see you tomorrow on Zoom.